came time to pick a college, I narrowed my choices. West Virginia was at the top of that list, and I never regretted that decision from the day that I set foot in Morgantown.
It's always good to go back home. No matter where any of us are from, I think there's always a connection to home. There's always a special place in our hearts for our home state and our hometown.
It's hard for me to put into words what WVU, West Virginia University, the Mountaineer family, and just being part of it means to me.
There is no other alumni like West Virginia. So all the places I've been, Kentucky, Georgia, Washington State, Kansas, if you're wearing the flying WV anywhere, somebody always stops and asks you where you're from. Or did you go to school there? Or are you from there?
I'm very proud of where I'm from. It's not just WVU, it's West Virginia State as a whole.
I chose to come to WVU because, that was the university of my state. That's where I wanted, that's where I needed to be, that's where I wanted to go. And I learned so much.
My time here at WVU, my upbringing in West Virginia has shaped who I am.
It's everything to me. It's my whole identity from childhood. So I was born, raised, and educated in West Virginia. So I'm 100% West Virginia.
Good afternoon, and welcome to another session of the WVU Alumni Webinar Series. My name is Kevin Berry, and I'm the Vice President of Alumni Relations at WVU. Today marks the first day of our 2022 homecoming celebration. And as I join you virtually from Morgantown, I can tell you firsthand that the excitement and energy on campus can be felt. We have a series of special events and initiatives to celebrate this occasion, all of which reminds us of the many reasons we love WVU. During homecoming, it's easy to remember the many moments from our college experience that made this place feel like home. And today we're going to talk to someone whose job it is to help students feel at home here on campus each and every day. Corey, so glad to see you.
I'm glad to be here, Kevin. Thanks for inviting me.
Hey, so Corey, how about I just go ahead? I'm just going to do a very, very quick introduction and we'll get started.
Sounds good.
Corey Farris serves as the Dean of Students at West Virginia University, a role he's held since 2013. As Dean of Students, Farris is the primary student advocate and serves as a liaison between students, university administrators, and community officials. He handles matters such as student support, discipline, and overall guidance. He oversees the Office of Student Life, student organizations, housing and university apartments, Adventure West Virginia, the Student Recreation Center, and residential education, among others. Throughout his career, Corey has served as a trusted mentor to thousands of current and former WVU students during their West Virginia University journey, myself included. My WVU experience was transformational. While I was here as a student, I discovered my passions and found my purpose. I was taught by world-class faculty, but I also found that my extracurricular activities were equally as meaningful. One of those experiences was serving as a new student orientation leader, and that was basically 30 years ago. Corey Farris was the director of that program at the time and served as my first boss at West Virginia University. Corey, I just wanted to express to the audience what an amazing experience that was and let you know that I emulate so much of what I learned from you working in that job in the 1990s all the way to this day. So Corey, again, we appreciate you for joining us today. as we celebrate the beginning of homecoming week here at West Virginia University. I'd love to just spend a little bit of time with you, if it's okay, reflecting on how student life at West Virginia University has changed over the years and hear more about your approach to serving the college students of today. As I begin to ask Corey a few questions, I just want to let the audience know, please feel free to submit your questions into the chat box. Here in a little bit, we're going to begin taking questions from the audience. So Corey, let's just go ahead and kick this off today, if you don't mind, and talk a little bit about a day in the life of the Dean of Students. Can you tell us what the average day looks like as you fulfill this important role?
Well, Kevin, thanks. First of all, kind words, what you said earlier, and always keep in mind that you now know this, that when you're a student, you thought you were learning from me, who was just a few years older than you. But in reality, now that you're on the flip side of that, every time I'm around a student just like you learn so much more, just being around them and seeing where they're at. But my day is probably like many others. I mean, I wake up, once I get into the office, I try to keep my work away from my home life. So I don't check email or do some things like that ahead of time. So I come in and sort of check the emails, any issues that happened overnight. I touch base with obviously some of the key leaders in student life. I sometimes touch base with the president, and probably the most important thing I do is I take a look at a list of activities that are going on throughout the day and quite frankly into the evening, because either I've been invited to them or I want to go to them because they're just fun activities to be where our students are at.
Corey, so now that we've got an idea of kind of what that typical day looks like, can you give us just a little bit of information about your background and how you became so passionate about the career that you have serving West Virginia University students?
Kevin, that's a great question. And as long as we've known each other, I don't think I've ever explained sort of how I got to where I was. And it's one of those things, I started out at WVU in my undergraduate year. I was going to go through my undergraduate degree, get a chemistry degree, go on to med school and become an adolescent psychiatrist. I wanted to work with people 15 to 24, something like that. Well, I got into my second year at WVU. I was in organic chemistry. I did well in my organic chemistry class, but it was a different experience than I was, quite frankly, I felt like I was competing with my fellow students because there were lots of us chemistry majors who were hoping to get into med school. That was certainly, I think, one of the organic in particular sticks in my head as one of those weeder courses. Well, as I didn't like that competition, I changed up. I ended up changing my major to personnel management out of the College of Business. Went on to my senior year, and I remember sitting with a good friend of mine now, Tom Sloan, and I said, Tom, I now don't know what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. And so he said, Corey, I just finished my doctoral work at Ohio State, and he told me about this program called student development or student personnel, and in effect, a subset of higher education administration. Well, I put all my eggs in one basket, applied, got in, didn't know how I was going to pay for it, went to campus for a weekend of my cohorts about a month before classes began. And they had one graduate assistant left open. And I interviewed, there was another person that I interviewed against, if I can say that, for that remaining graduate assistant position. I got it because I'd been an RA at WVU. So check mark for WVU for giving me that experience. Went off, completed my degree at Ohio State, worked at the University of Iowa, came back in 1991 and started working for WVU back then. And I've just had some great mentors at WVU, Kevin, as you've had, that gave me opportunities from when I came back and worked orientation to being involved in undergraduate recruiting in the late 90s, to getting back into housing into the 2000s and student conduct, and then all those other things that happened, throughout the 2000s that allowed me to get to the position that I'm in now, thanks to, now Clemson President Jim Clements and my former Vice President Ken Gray.
Corey, listening to you tell that story, the one thing that kind of popped into my head is, you know, you go out into the world to gain experiences, but there's something just incredibly special about coming back home to WVU, is there not?
Absolutely right. You know, Kevin, that's one of those things. Though I went off to Ohio State and went off to the University of Iowa, I knew at some point I was going to be back closer to home. And the opportunity at WVU happened. And again, you don't know how these things, you know, are going to happen, because, you know, I'd gotten a nice promotion at the University of Iowa. Things were going quite well there. I bought and closed on my first house in July of 1990. A friend at WVU gave me a call in August and said, "Hey, Corey, there may be a job that may come available. Would you like us to send you the job description when it's posted?" And I said, "Absolutely." This was, remember, Kevin, pre-internet and all those other things. So it was still snail mail, and someone had to call you on the phone, you know, with our TID numbers, if you remember those numbers, to get those long distance calls to go through. And so Brenda called me, and in August and September, I applied for a job, that new student orientation job. In October, they called me for an interview. In November, they confirmed my interview dates. December, I was on campus and had a good interview. January, they called and offered me the job. February, I was here. February 1st, I started in 1991. Now, the crazy part about it was, before even this was taking place, I was talking to the mentors and the other folks in my life. I said, "I don't know what I'm going to do." This was back in August, and they said, you know, you know, whether or not I should apply or not. And my friends wisely said to me, "Corey, you only have one job right now. You have it at the University of Iowa. Create your option at West Virginia University. And if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. Then you have a choice to make." Well, I took that advice, and, you know, they reminded me, even though I just bought my first house, houses are bought and sold every single day. So don't let that be that barrier. And then once that choice, that option came for me to accept or decline a job at WVU, that was a no-brainer that I was going to accept that job. And I did it in a heartbeat. So I was very honored that they thought of me and offered me the job. And here we are many years later, 31 years later, Kevin.
Well, you said you had a choice. I just can't tell you how happy I am that you made the choice that you did. Corey, let's just talk a little bit. You know, the last couple of years have been, you know, very interesting years, I guess, would probably be a bit of an understatement. Let's talk a little bit about some of the challenges of the last several years and what student life looks like now as we exit the pandemic.
Yeah, Kevin, that's a great question. You know, I will not forget that moment when I was sitting in meetings with the president and the president's leadership team at the beginning of COVID. And certainly, in some respects, we sent students home on Friday, March 13th, 2020, for what we thought was an extended spring break. And that extended spring break, you know, lasted several years. And what we went through, from masking to physical distancing to having very few students on campus to most of us working from home, it was you know, those of us that are used to a vibrant, active campus life in the middle of the pandemic, seeing that bit in front of outside my window, I'm in Emore Hall, of Grumbines Island, and no traffic and no students during class changes. It was just heartbreaking, because I knew that students weren't having the experiences they wanted. Well, our students were resilient, came out of it, and now the students are back, and especially this fall seemed like a magical time, because our students, when they returned, they were full of smiles. They were especially grateful for all the activities that we had planned for them during Welcome Week activities. And quite frankly, every step along the way, the students have smiled and said, "I'm glad you've done what you've done." And we've stuck with them. You know, we know that, you know, as we came out of the pandemic, you know, many of us have heard about the mental health challenges our students are experiencing. And so we've worked extra hard, not only to beef up counseling support, but also made sure that they've got ways to engage with their faculty, with their administrative staff, with their clubs and organizations, with jobs, and anything that we could do to show we're back to where we should be and where we were a few years ago. So 95% we're back. COVID's still around us, so we still are sensitive to that. but we're back to a full, vibrant campus with students doing lots of good things, fun things, studying and working hard, doing some great research, and having that fun outside the classroom.
So Corey, I've been looking forward to this part of the conversation since you and I had our initial chat about doing this webinar. I think this is going to be a lot of fun for the audience that we have with us today. So let's travel back in time, if you don't mind, and let's talk a little bit about how student life has evolved over the last 50 years. And it's my understanding that you have a few slides, some photos that we're going to be kind of showing as you kind of talk us through the evolution of WVU student life since the early 1970s.
Yeah. Well, you know, Kevin, if we go back to, you know, the early 70s, I mean, I wasn't quite on campus then, but if we go back to, let's just go back 50 years. I mean, I think about what we're celebrating 50 years today, or this year. We're celebrating 50 years of Title IX, and that's, you know, that equity of women in sports and in our athletic teams. We're celebrating 50 years of women being in the Pride of West Virginia, the Mountaineer Marching Band, when Don Wilcox was the then director, and brought women into the marching band. I think of things that we've done over the years. I think of 1980 when we left Old Mountaineer Field and we went to New Mountaineer Field, and John Denver sang Country Roads, but we're now in New Mountaineer. That's the Old Mountaineer Field that's up on the screen there now, downtown. Remember the old bridge that went straight across to Sunnyside? Eventually that bridge was closed, and you know, the club district and things like that actually back in those days was in the Sunnyside area where the bars were. They've now moved to the downtown area. But I think of, as we go through then through the 80s, from U92 radio station opening and starting out, we had our rec center that opened up in the early 2000s. There's our Mountain Lair. We did a major renovation to Mountain Lair. I think that was in 1989. So these pictures, if you remember that area on the lower right, is what we call the Sunken Garden. That's now where our food court is in the Mountain Lair, but that's where Chick-fil-A and a number of other restaurants are in our Mountain Lair. But that was renovations in the late 80s. Certainly, you and I came in. We had some moments in the late 80s ourselves. I think you were a freshman then, in early 80s. I graduated from WVU, and so there's some shameless plugs of us. That's my mom, may she rest in peace. But that was my graduation day outside the Coliseum, and Kevin, you look bewildered in that picture, your freshman picture. So we were all bewildered our freshman year. So we get into the 90s. I certainly returned. You were a freshman here. Greek life was very active in the 90s. David Hardesty came in as president. We started Fall Fest, which is a big outdoor concert that we have right before classes begin. The Mountaineer Parents Club got its start in the 90s. There's a shot of Fall Fest. That's outside the rec center is where we hold Fall Fest now, but usually 3 or 4 bands that play, and we'll get 15 or 20,000 of our students there who will be celebrating. We'll have food and other entertainment. That's part of our Welcome Week activities. Maybe I'll talk a little bit about that. Welcome Week, I'm skipping around on time. Sorry about that time frame, Kevin. So, you know, we probably about 5 or 6 years ago, we reimagined Welcome Week. And we've got lots of fun activities. We bring students back to campus a few days before classes begin. We get them moved into the residence halls, and then we begin a series of activities, a lot focused on first-year students, but all students can participate, from job fairs to student organization fairs to opportunities to meet with their academic advisors and their academic faculty and their academic deans. We have a movie fest at our Coliseum that we show a popular movie that our students select. We do some online social media polling to figure out what movies they want to watch. But then probably the 2 big signature events are Fall Fest that you saw the picture of, and then this particular class photo where we have our freshmen together. We call it, right now we're calling it Monday Night Lights because it happens on Monday night, but we get our freshman students to the stadium. We have fun on the field. Quite frankly, most students will never have the opportunity to be on the field at the stadium. So we bring them on the field. They have fun and games. We have food for them. But then also we once we get them up into the stands, then we have some of our leaders of the university speak to them, from our vice president for diversity, equity, inclusion. We usually have some athletic coaches, the president and provost speak. Then certainly the Mountaineer offers some cheers, teaches our students some traditions inside the stadium and just some outside the stadium. Some of those traditions, from the Let's Go cheers to other activities to photos and things like that. Then we take our students back out of the stands after the marching band has performed their pregame show, and we do a class photo right there on the field. So lots of things have changed, and lots of ways we do things. Campus recreation I haven't talked about, but we've got a beautiful campus recreation center that we opened in 2001, our Adventure West Virginia program. Again, ways to connect our students to our campus. Through the programs that we have. We know if we can get students to build some connections and friendships before they arrive on campus, they're going to be well suited once they arrive on campus in the fall. So whether it's the Student Rec Center, Adventure West Virginia, heck, even 6 or 7 years ago, Kevin, we opened up our art museum. I mean, I think of our athletic facilities that have changed for our students over time, from Dick DeLess Stadium to Mountaineer Field I'd mentioned, to the new Mon County ballpark that we've got. We've got some incredible facilities for our students to have some great out of the classroom experience. And Kevin, let me throw out there, we often talk about 168 hours that are in a week. I often will say students are in class 18 hours. So what are they doing those other 150 hours? And so those are those fun activities and those facilities that have all taken place. And it's just so different over the past 50 years. It's an incredible experience.
Well, Corey, it's like I said earlier, when I came to WVU, I found my passions and purpose. And an important part of that was what I learned in the classroom. But what was equally important were all the other aspects of the West Virginia University experience that kind of helps you explore new things. And it's just so exciting to see the programs as well as the facilities and those types of things that you and your staff are responsible for delivering to our students.
Yeah, I'm very, very lucky. I mean, whether it's the arts and entertainment folks who are bringing concert shows and plays, or our student organization folks that have 500 plus clubs and organizations to help meet the needs of our students, to our fraternity and sorority office, to just the Mountain Lair and Recreation and Center for Black Culture, all the ways, collegiate recovery. Look, we know all of our students have different needs, and we're trying to personalize that experience now more than ever, so each student has that outstanding and completely different and unique student experience that meets the students where they are.
So just a quick reminder to everyone, we are going to be moving on to questions for the audience here in a little bit. So I just wanted to remind you, if there's a specific question that you would like to ask Corey, feel free to drop it into the chat box, and we'll be transitioning to that here in a little bit. So Corey, let's talk a little bit about kind of what you see for the future of student life, both at West Virginia University as well as across the country. Can you talk a little bit about kind of where you see the profession heading, as well as the opportunities for students moving forward?
Yeah, that's a good question, Kevin. I think the profession that I grew up in has become much more important because so many realize that outside the classroom experience is so important. And in fact, I work with our academic partners in the provost office as we sort of document, and not sort of, we actually are documenting as well as assessing some of those out of classroom experiences, because those accrediting agencies that accredit the university, but also accredit the individual colleges and programs, are looking for that out of classroom experience, because we are constantly hearing from employers about the skills that are needed by our students. And so a lot of those skills, Kevin, as we've talked, occur outside the classroom, from organizing events to working together as a team, to managing, I'll say, adversity or when stress comes along. we've got to make sure our students are ready outside the classroom. So my profession has evolved. It is certainly not where it was 30 years ago, and I'm excited where we are now, and looking forward to the future of where we go. So, and the future students, I think will continue to adapt. I think that the thing that we grapple with most, quite frankly, is how social media and the internet and things like that are impacting students. And I think, students are used to in many ways, anywhere, anytime. How do they access campus resources? So, I talked a little bit ago about mental health, but some of the resources we've got are available to students 24/7, whether it's mental health resources or access to our residence hall main desk staff who can support them, to late night programming we've got through WVU Up All Night. You've heard about that program. Those things will continue, as we serve our students throughout the 24-hour day that we live in.
So Corey, a little while ago, you talked, when we were talking about some of the programs and services, a little bit about Adventure West Virginia. Can you just do a little bit deeper dive and kind of share with the audience exactly what that program offers, and in particular, the academic elements that are associated with it as well?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So, Kevin, Adventure West Virginia started in 2002 by our friend Greg Corio, who was at that point working on a graduate thesis. And Adventure West Virginia is a program that we offer during the summer. They're mostly week-long programs where we take a group of students, 24 or 25 students out and take them around the state of West Virginia. They may go rock climbing, whitewater rafting, hiking, camping, or all of those. We will do some zip lines, and we'll do some high and low ropes courses. But they have fun throughout the day with some rigorous programs. But then also in the evening, after they've had their dinner, they will sit around a campfire afterwards, and they will talk about the challenges and opportunities that they may experience when they're a student at WVU. And that is anywhere from academic challenges to the temptations that they may face outside the classroom, to, at the same time, mental health and how they access mental health, or maybe they sprain an ankle, how they get help from transportation. But we talk lots of ways about how to cope and how to be successful students once they return to class and the campus in the fall. Then the other thing is, though we focus on first-year students, we've got some sophomore and junior year programs. We've got some programs that Adventure West Virginia leads that are overseas. We've got some programs that we focus on our veterans. We've got adventure programs that we focus for our students that are in a recovery program of some sort. So we can tailor it, and they're all are good. They're good for some academic credit. And some of our academic partners, I think of business, I think of journalism, I think of engineering. Some of them will actually send a faculty member or an advisor of some sort along with these Adventure West Virginia trips. So not only are you interacting and experiencing the beautiful outdoors of West Virginia, but you have some opportunities to have some great time with faculty or other mentors while learning about campus and what it's like to be ready once classes start a few months later.
So Corey, we talked a little bit about some of the differences in the student life experience over the last 50 years. Just a question that I have, I'm an alum who graduated many years ago, and I know that there are, the student experience isn't exactly the same as what it was then. Can you share some of what your thoughts are about the differences between this current generation of students and generations of WVU students in the past?
Yeah, Kevin, I keep saying that's a great question because they're all great questions. But I think there's some incredible opportunities for our students that, quite frankly, you and I did not have. And some of these that are up on the screen now, I think of how transportation has changed from buses and hitchhiking to get between the campuses to now students have the PRT. But Kevin, the other opportunities I talked about, it's much easier to do research with the internet and the way they can access library resources online. I think it's a whole lot easier now that we're in the era of Zoom and Microsoft Teams and Google Meet and FaceTime. how they can interview experts. And quite frankly, I know many of them access our alums that way. I mean, I know you all oftentimes will set them up with some students up with mentors so they can reach out to people in the field. Similarly, our faculty and staff who know others out in the field, they can engage to understand while they're going through that major, is that major for them, or maybe they need to adjust their major or their course of study just a little bit differently. I do think that some of the challenges are a little bit different. I mean, I do think mental health is much more of a concern now than it seemed to be when we were students. And when we were students, if it was, I don't think we talked about it and were as open and upfront and wanting to support our friends as before. But again, the other side of that, good things are that our parents are today are much more engaged with their students than my parents were, and probably your parents were when we were in college. I mean, for most of us, we joke that our parents sent us off to school. Maybe we might get to call home once a week, but we probably did not go home until Thanksgiving, that first break. And now we have flipped that so much that we welcome our students to campus during orientation. We welcome our families back during move-in week. We welcome our families back during fall family weekend and throughout the year. And we know that students are engaging and talking to their parents multiple times a day in many cases. And again, look at the growth of our Mountaineer Parents Clubs since President Hardesty and Mrs. Hardesty launched that in 1995. I think there are 23 or 24,000 families who are subscribed to the e-newsletter that goes out every couple of weeks. So there's a lot of differences, but I'll also say there's some things that are still very much the same on how we support our students with love and care and kindness. It's just a little bit different how we deliver it now.
So, Corey, unless you grew up in the immediate vicinity of Morgantown, the one common experience that I think every WVU student has is at one point they lived in a WVU residence hall. Can you talk a little bit about how residential living has evolved over the last couple of decades?
Yeah, that's a great question. Another one of those great questions. So, and my background, and maybe I may even call it sort of that first job love, was the residence halls. I was hired as an RA, my last year at WVU. Then I went off and worked in the residence halls at Ohio State and the University of Iowa. And so the residence halls are much different in some respects. In those days, most of us would have called them dorms. And the best way to describe what they were then and what they are now, in the dorm days, we would joke that you'd eat, sleep, and lie dormant in the residence halls. You'd dorm. And now we've got a whole department called Residence Life that makes sure that a student has a well-rounded experience. So instead of eating, sleeping, and lying dormant, we now have life in the residence halls. So RAs are doing lots of programming and again, engaging them, personalizing the experience. We're calling and making some outreach to some of those students prior to their arrival on campus. Those RAs are highly trained. They go through a week and a half, 2 weeks worth of training prior to everyone else coming back on campus. So and then the amenities of our residence halls have changed. We've got craft centers in our residence halls now. We have a lot more private spaces, private bedrooms in the residence halls, less shared bathroom space. So we still have the traditional Dadisman and Borman and Bennett Lyon and Braxton Brook towers. If you were here long enough, you might remember towers as towers 1, 2, 3, and 4. But they still have private community baths. But nowadays, those a lot more private bath and suite style spaces. Lots of study spaces in our residence halls, and then we've got fitness equipment. We've brought fitness equipment and meeting space and movie spaces and things like that into the residence halls. So it's a whole different experience.
So Corey, I'm going to go ahead. We've got a number of questions from the audience, so I'm going to pivot to some of those. Don't worry, I've got a couple of more questions for you before you leave. You're not quite off the hook yet.
All right.
But the first audience question is, what is your favorite spot on campus?
Oh, gosh. I think I have a couple. I'm going to say I have two favorite spots. My favorite spot is my office right now because I have a great view of campus, and every class change I can see students move back and forth across the street in front of Mountain Lair, moving their way across the street. And I love E-Moore. It's a great building to work in. It's always been the home of student affairs, always been the home of student life. So I'm thrilled to be here. But probably my other favorite space is that patch. I'm going to try to describe it, but right outside that, there's an overlook right outside Blaney House, right outside the president's home, that looks over the river valley. You can see downtown. You can see across the river. It's a beautiful spot if you can't get out to Cooper's Rock this time of year when the leaves are changing, but it's a spectacular view of Morgantown. And so probably those are my two favorite spots. But if I'm in the car, let me throw out the other thing. My favorite spot if I'm in the car is when you come up over the hill and you see the Coliseum when you're coming up 79. When you see that beacon of gold of the Coliseum, once you're coming up 79, you're home. And it just makes your heart sing when you see that.
And Corey, another one of my personal favorites is when you're on the top floor balcony of Evansdale Crossing, just the view of all of Evansdale campus. That's another one of my favorites as well.
Yep, I've named 4 spots already. I think that would be number 5. I think so. It is a great spot. I agree with you, Kevin.
Corey, another question from the audience. What additions to campus do you believe have proved to be the most important?
I think our campus recreation. I think some of the outdoor stuff to celebrate the outside. So, I think our campus recreation center, the campus recreation fields that are surrounding that. I think our outdoor education center out at the University Forest is incredible. But also think the addition of on the academic side of the house. I think of the new Reynolds Hall that's opened up. What a remarkable building. I think of the new Ag Sciences, remarkable building. I think of the build out of our academic medical center, from the hospitals to the clinics, but the opportunities that our students can get world-class experiences in some of our newest academic buildings, or the transformation of the older ones, how they've updated them. It's remarkable. I think of, again, our planetarium and the new renovations that took place a few years ago at Whitehall. Just incredible experiences.
Corey, one of my favorite activities outside of homecoming, which is clearly the best, but is when we do our graduate emeritus reunion. These are individuals who graduated more than 50 years ago. And, I know that you participate in that activity with us. It's always a lot of fun, particularly when you have an alum who has not been back in more than 50 years, for them to see the differences on campus, the growth on Evansdale campus, the renovations, as you have said, and the new buildings that are on the downtown campus. It's always exciting for them to see the progress that's been made at WVU since they graduated.
Yeah, Kevin, you and I have been around, and so the changes that we see are gradual, and they're happening every single day. But you're right, whether it's the emeritus person who hasn't been back to campus for 50 years since they graduated, or quite frankly, once we hit, you certainly were here as a full-time employee when the city and the university hit this critical mass, and the rapid growth of not just the university and the building that takes place, but the change of the community of Morgantown and Monongalia County, of new businesses, new buildings. It is breathtaking about how all that's changed. And you and I remember, if you wanted, to go big time, to whether it was for shopping or restaurants, you had to go up to Pittsburgh. Local shopping wasn't as good, and then all of a sudden we got, the shopping malls built up around here with some great stores and the different shopping areas around town. But then just the opportunities that grew up here in Morgantown with the rail trail system that's available to our community and to our students. And again, all the opportunities that WVU brings us every single day.
Well, and Corey, this provides the perfect opportunity for a shameless plug, which is for the audience. Tomorrow afternoon, we're going to have Ted Svelik on a webinar, who's going to talk about WVU's campus, past, present, as well as some of the things that they can expect in the future. So if that's a topic of interest to you, we certainly encourage you to join us tomorrow. So Corey, another question from the audience. How has Greek life changed over time, over time in what you have observed?
Kevin, so relevant. I mean, as many campuses have seen, there's lots of pros and cons that seem to be argued in the press about Greek life across campuses all across the country. My personal opinion is Greek life is as relevant today as it was years ago. I think it is different, and the risks are different today than they were some years ago, or maybe we're paying closer attention to the risks today than happened years ago. But the fundamentals of why fraternities and sororities were started, from leadership development to camaraderie to building those networks for future jobs and other things, and friendships and things like that, that all those are relevant today as they were 50 years ago, quite frankly. But I do think that there are challenges today because of our society and where we are, and people and our families and students are less tolerant of some of the sides of Greek life that aren't so good, whether it's hazing or some of those other things. But we work to eradicate those things because we want our students to have a good and safe experience. WVU, we're not going to turn a blind eye to what goes on, and we've had some back and forth with some of our fraternities and sororities, but I think we're on a great path with our Greek life director that we have today. And again, Greek life is alive and well at WVU, and I'm usually at every weekend at one of their not necessarily their social events, but one of their philanthropic events and other fundraisers they have. Or, Kevin, I every so often I have a date with President Gee, and I'm going out to fraternity and sorority socials or their philanthropic events, and so they're great fun wherever they are. And I will tell you the other thing that's changed a bit too. If I didn't mention, just to talk about the rise of our NPHC groups, as well as our professional Greek councils and our honoraries, and our many of our fraternities and sororities are much more, I'll say, multicultural and much more inclusive than they were years ago. And it's made Greek life much more vibrant than it was years ago. So it's fun and exciting to see where they will take themselves here in the coming years also.
And Corey, I do want to add that we're going to be celebrating alumni from Greek organizations a little bit later this week when we induct a new class into the Greek Hall of Fame. I believe that's on Friday.
It is on Friday. Yep, you're right. Friday afternoon.
So Corey, another question from the audience. What is something that WVU's student life used to do that you would like to see incorporated into student life today?
What we used to do, I think about the things that we used to do from whether my student days, or my early career at WVU. And I think about some of the big concerts that we had at the Coliseum or in the Mountain Lair, or I think of some of the great speakers when we'd have the Festival of Ideas. And I think about those things, but I think times have changed. And so though I liked them, I liked it when the speakers of Vincent Price or Sanjay Gupta or some of the others would come to campus and speak, or those big Coliseum concerts. But students consume music differently, because now it's whatever interests you. You can find a YouTube channel or a music channel or a Spotify channel to listen to that music. And so and I think about some of the other concerts. Most concerts, these big concerts that are taking place today, Bonnaroo, things like that, they're mega concerts with lots of performers that come through. And I'd love to see some of those big concerts come back to, as well as some of those speakers. But again, what concert would draw lots of our students to, or if I thought about a speaker, there's so many YouTube stars and Instagram influencers and things like that on social media. I wouldn't know what speaker to bring back to campus, though. I would go and hear them because all speakers and all concerts are just great entertainment for me. So that's a great question. But but I also don't want to go backwards in time too.
Completely understand. So Corey, it's homecoming week, and this is another question from the audience. Kind of thinking about the topic of moments, right? And remembering those moments from your days on campus. What's one of the most memorable moments from your time as either a student or employee of West Virginia University?
Kevin, I'm going to go back to my student days because I think what I'm about to describe then, that our students today still have that same type of fun. And that I'm talking about is I remember to this day, every year, when we would get, as a student, when we'd get some good snows, my friends and I would go out and we'd find a good hill, and it'd be 2 or 3 in the morning. It would be quiet and peaceful as the snow was falling. And we'd find a hill and we'd go sled riding, and we'd find something to go down a hill. And to this day, students continue to do that. Now we know they've done it in some more unsafe ways that always scares us to death. And so we try to find safer ways for them to do it. But I just think of those moments that you're with your friends and you're laughing, whole body, full laughter, that there's nothing but joy that's going on in your life. And that's because you're going down, playing in the fun, playing in the snow, snowball battles and things like that. But the other thing that still certainly is memorable, quite frankly, is that I still get chills, when I'm in the football stadium, quite frankly, and whether it's the marching band performing or singing the national anthem. But that's not just me and WVU, but it is the university community and the state of West Virginia, that we're all in the stadium together for one purpose, and that's to have a great time and celebrate our team. Good times or bad times, it's just fun to be together, because there's so many elements of a football game, whether it's tailgates or others, that make it a lot of fun. So 2 things, so current and past. How's that?
Yeah, Corey, it's that, common bond that ties us together, right? It's
Absolutely.
the reason why, when you see somebody in an airport with a flying WV on, you have to immediately turn around to them and say, let's go, right? It's those shared experiences that we all have as WVU alumni.
Kevin, you're absolutely right. And that's not just at the airport here in the United States, but, I've been fortunate to travel elsewhere outside this country, and it's amazing how well recognized our flying WV is. I think that came back in Don Nealon's days when he was coach in the early 80s. I think, was it Dick Martin's brother, I think, who actually did that original design, former athletic director. So what a well recognized mark for WVU that people love.
So Corey, again, we're doing this today because it's homecoming week. What are some of the special aspects of homecoming week as alumni come back to campus? And can you talk a little bit about some of the ways that your team is going to be engaging students in homecoming this week?
Yes, so absolutely. I mean, look, homecoming is, to me, is so important for our alums to come back to see their campus, to try to connect up with old friends. Use Facebook and whatever old-fashioned ways, whether it's letter writing or calling up, to meet some of those friends, lifelong friends that we've all met at some point at WVU. But that's the time to come back to campus, to explore campus, and to go back and allow those memories to come back alive when you walk up the steps from Armstrong Hall. And quite frankly, Kevin, this is the time of year that I'll get some requests, and I'll get them over the summer too, from students who want to go back and see their residence hall room. Now, this time of year, it's a little bit more difficult, or they're looking for a favorite professor or something like that. And I'm often able to connect them up with some of those professors or student life, my colleagues, the Tom Sloans and the Herman Moses and the Gordon Thorns of the world. that those folks who had indelible marks on many of our lives, how do we connect them back up? So lots of activities this week, from some of the events that you all are doing around campus, the pop-up events, to the homecoming royalty competition that goes on. We will still crown some students who've gone through some interviews and some popular votes, and combine up through a formula to select 2 people to recognize on the football field on Saturday, to the big event on Friday night, the homecoming parade that will take place, pack the high street, and seeing our community come and enjoy that, to that big game on Saturday, and the tailgate that goes on ahead of time.
Well, and Corey, another event that I saw, Mountaineer Friday. Can you kind of talk with people a little bit about that? That's more or less a student-run pep rally, right?
Yeah, it is a student-run pep rally. It's mostly led by our Mountaineer Maniacs, and so it's a way for Maniacs to get together. We partner with the WVU bookstore, and we'll make sure our students have appropriate gear, to make sure if there's any latest or greatest T-shirts or sweatshirts or hoodies or ball caps, that students have access to that. We'll have food and water and Coca-Cola products and things like that for our students to celebrate. The Mountaineer will be there. Oftentimes, I haven't seen who's on for this Friday's event. It's going to be right outside the bookstore in the afternoon. I haven't seen which of the athletic coaches will go up, but we've had Coach Huggins who stopped by. We've had our soccer coaches, both men's and women's soccer coaches, have stopped by. So it's great fun throughout that afternoon. That sort of pep rally with good music and good activities, fun and games. We've got some, I think we have cornhole and some other games for students to play, and the opportunities for them to win prizes too.
So, follow-up question for you, Corey. How many homecomings have you participated in as both a student and an employee? What number are we at now?
So let's see. I would probably say 36 or 37, Kevin.
That's amazing.
Quite a few. Yeah.
And what are your
scary?
And I think I'm 32, maybe.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
What are your favorite homecoming traditions?
I think the parade itself, because that to me is a big welcome mat for our alums and friends of the university to come back, because the parade is fun. There are little kids there that are squealing because they see the Mountaineer for the first time. I think of the alumni band who's able to march down High Street and relive their glory days when they were in the pride of West Virginia. I think of the different floats that our fraternities and sororities decorate and add entertainment. I think of community members that come through. I think of the president going through. I think of the WVU Child Care Center and the little kids marching down, and then when the Pride of West Virginia comes down, it is such an enormous band that goes edge to edge of the street, and they are so loud. When you're right there, and then you realize how awesome they are when they're in the football stadium, filling up the stadium with the sound. But when they're in, I'll say, that little bit of a canyon going down High Street, it is powerful and it echoes and it's thrilling. And like I said, it's the welcome mat for the weekend for the city and WVU to say, welcome back, alums. I just think it's exciting. And so that's why I love it. Whether it's cold or hot, I love it. The only thing that I miss, Kevin, is, we were talking about this recently, is that old Dairy Queen on High Street is no longer on High Street. You were about the end of the ice cream season when you could get an ice cream cone at that Dairy Mart on High Street going down the hill. So.
Yeah, Corey, I can literally remember as my, 2 children who are now grown adults with bags, just literally picking up as much candy as they could from the homecoming parade. That is obviously one of my fondest memories as a parent. So, and one other thing that I just want to add to the audience, you can get a complete list of all the things that are going to be happening on campus all week long. Literally, we started today. It's going to be going throughout the weekend by visiting homecoming.wvu.edu. Like I said, there's a complete list of homecoming activities that are going to be taking place. Corey, as we begin to wrap up, anything else you want to add about your experiences as well as student life on WVU's campus, because we're approaching 4 p.m.
Yeah. Well, first, Kevin, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to be on, and I'm thrilled that you're in your role now leading the Alumni Association. But Kevin, like you, WVU transformed my life and continues to transform my life every single day. You know, I know at some point, you know, we all move on. I have no idea when that is in my own life, but I will be forever grateful to WVU, to the alums who came before me, who allowed me to stand on their shoulders, to have an incredible experience. And so that, to me, is why it's an honor for me to serve in my role, and to engage and support our students in as many ways as I can, to be with them when I can, whether it's at 2 a.m. at WVU up all night, you know, while they're having fun, or, you know, when there are moments that they are struggling and need someone to support them, making sure they get that support. So I'm grateful for all that WVU's given me, and it's a privilege for me to work here and work with colleagues like you and the rest at the Alumni Association, and quite frankly across campus.
Well, and again, Corey, you know, it's a blessing to have you working in the role that you are at WVU. And again, thank you so much for the very important role that you played in my development as both a student and throughout my career at WVU. I'm certainly grateful for that. So,
thank you.
And again, Corey, thanks for reminding us of the important work that you and your team does each day to ensure that our students continue to have access to very special WVU experiences that we all remember so fondly. So again, Corey, thanks so much for being with us. We certainly appreciate it.
Thank you, Kevin.
Here at the WVU Alumni Association, we're heading off to continue our week-long celebration of homecoming on campus. If you've enjoyed this virtual conversation, be sure to join us again on Wednesday at 2 p.m. for a discussion with Ted Svelik about the beauty of our campus over the years. For this and other special events, check out homecoming.wvu.edu to access the full schedule. I also want to add that we have virtual Spirit Days, so make sure to check out our Twitter and Instagram accounts for more information about that. Thank you again for joining us today, and let's go Mountaineers. Happy homecoming.